Watson here, and again, welcome back to YouTube. You know, there's a lot of confusion about the church. I've talked to people in the past where bringing the topic up has caused them to kind of give me the proverbial deer in the headlights look. They kind of go catatonic. It conjures up ideas in their minds, kind of weird imaginations, so to speak, and gives them a lot of confusion because, frankly, the word is just not understood correctly. I've seen grown-ups, people, professionals like airplane pilots and lawyers, doctors and accountants and firemen go into a particular church meeting, of course, depending on the denomination, but literally lose all sense of decorum, social etiquette, and end up acting somewhat silly and rather foolish and frankly quite odd, jumping up and down, rolling on the floor, and in some cases, just really being quite frightening in some cases. Then on the other extreme, I've talked to people who think that, well, if you're not in their organization, if you're not part of their particular church group administration, well, then you're anathema to God. That's right, they want to put God in a box. They want to make him a Catholic. They want to make him a Baptist. They want to make him a Pentecostal, or they want to make him Jewish, They want to put him in a box so that the point of it is that unless you're in their organization, your name is on their computer, well, then you're not in the church. So you got to get in their group in order for you to get right with God. Now, is this even logical? Is this even rational, where God is only working through one man at any one time, one organization, one administration, one board of directors at any one time, and everything else outside of that one organization and that one man is not part of the church? Well, the short answer to that is absolutely not. No, God works through multiplicity of personalities. He works through duplicity in some cases. Remember Aaron and Moses? Remember Jacob, the father of Joseph, who was sold into slavery, and Joseph taken to Egypt, preparing the way for his father and family to come to Egypt so that they could avoid the sadness and the treachery of the famine that went for 7 years. God working with the prophets. How about all of the prophets that overlapped in Israel? Those prophets that spoke to the Israelites in the north when the Assyrians were attacking them. Some 2 and 3 of those prophets were alive all at the same time. How about 120 years later, when the Babylonians invaded Judah, and you had Jeremiah down there in Palestine, Israel, in the land of Israel, and Ezekiel down by the river Kibar, and you had Daniel up there in the king's court where Nebuchadnezzar was in the city of Babylon. All 3 of these men working in ministry to God with their own separate messages, bringing that message to the people in that region at that time. No, your Bible is loaded, my friends, loaded with the fact that God works in multiplicity of personalities. Even in the end, you're going to have 2 witnesses. How about the apostles? Peter and Paul and the others that all worked in their own ministries, scattering to the wind and going out all over God's country in their ministries, working for Jesus Christ, promoting and advancing the gospel. No, my friends, this concept of working through one organization or one man at any one time is erroneous, pure erroneous at best. So it brings us back to trying to define what is the church? Well, it simply comes from a Greek word, a real simple Greek word called ekklesia. And what it means is it means called out ones, assembly, congregation, a group. I meet with a group, an ekklesia in Ohio. You may meet with a group over in Texas or in San Francisco or down in Miami or Kingston, Jamaica, or up in Toronto or out in Victoria or over in Japan, the Philippines, or maybe in Australia or someplace else in Asia or in Europe and Africa, South America. But you may meet with an ekklesia, an assembly, a congregation, a group. That's all it means. There's nothing esoteric about it. There's nothing surreal about it. There's no science fiction associated with it. But there is one thing, a distinction that needs to be made, and that is it is not defined by an organization. The church is a spiritual organism and is indeed very versatile. Let me point something out to you over in the book of Acts. I've already turned there, Acts chapter 21. Here the Apostle Paul is in his travels, and he comes up on, notice, verse 4, Acts chapter 21. Finding disciples, we tarried there 7 days, who said to Paul through the Spirit that he should not go up to Jerusalem. So here comes the Apostle Paul. He's in his travels, you can read the previous scriptures, and he finds people that were in the church that he was unaware of. You can also read the same scenario, a different group of people at a different location, but the same principle occurs in chapter 28 of the book of Acts, where the Apostle Paul comes up on people that he was unaware of were there, and lo and behold, finds that they too are Christians. I can't tell you how many times this organization, the Church of God International, has come up on people around the world who are in fact part of the church that we come in contact with that we did not know. I mean, we didn't know they existed. And now all of a sudden, and certainly the World Wide Web provides us much access to a broader audience than we could ever imagine now, that as many organizations benefit from. But the point of it is, there are people around this world that we don't know about that make contact with us and ask us for Bibles. They ask us for services of different types and sorts. They ask us to provide them with literature or discs. And we do these things as a service of our work for Jesus Christ and advancing the gospel. But here's my point. We are not in control of them. They are not necessarily a part of our organization. But could we say that because they're not part of our organization, that they're not part of the church at large, the spiritual organism of which Jesus Christ said the gates of the grave would not prevail over it, meaning that there would always be somebody on this earth that would be part of that church, and maybe the church would be reduced in size throughout the generations of mankind's history, but nevertheless, Christ's promise stands firm that death would never wipe out the whole population. There would always be somebody or some bodies that would be here on earth representing that church. And I submit to you, my friends, that just because an individual may not be in your organization doesn't necessarily mean they're not in the spiritual organism. And that is an important distinction that you need to make. And you know how you make it? You make it simply by discerning the spirits. You need to become familiar with what are the signs of the true church. What is the sign of the real gospel? And the true church, the true ecclesia, those who are really called out from this Babylonian system that we are surrounded by throughout the world. And I mean, it is throughout the world. It permeates and girdles the globe completely, this Babylonian system. Well, over here in the book of Revelation, let me bring your attention to something. Chapter 12 specifically, the book of Revelation, and in chapter 12, we read something that is very poignant, very clear, and very simple. This is how you identify the church. He says here, the dragon was wroth, he was angry with the woman figuratively here in this particular context being the church, and the dragon, of course, Satan the devil, was very mad at the church, and he went to make war, that is, Satan the devil went to make war with the remnant of her, that is the church's seed, that is the people in that ecclesia, that called out group. And in this context, the writer, John in this case, states this, which keep the commandments of God, all the commandments, including the fourth commandment that is oftentimes labeled as the test commandment, the keeping of the Sabbath. As a matter of fact, remembering keeping of the Sabbath. But the point here is, in this particular case, with what is mentioned here, it's easy to recognize that it would be a commandment-keeping group of people and retain, secondly, very important, retain the testimony of Jesus Christ. What is the testimony of Christ? That He's the Messiah. He's alive at the right hand of the Father, that He is coming back. He's on a countdown from heaven to come back and take over this planet, land on the Mount of Olives, and reinstitute the government of God on this planet. That is at the heart and core of the gospel, and resurrect those who have spent their lives doing their best to represent Him while they lived. My friends, won't you let us help you to better understand this? Call or actually hit your web over at www.cgi.org, and ask for the piece that we're offering here on today's YouTube broadcast. It's titled The Church That Jesus Built. Very simply, The Church That Jesus Built. All you've got to do is hit us on that website or email us at info.cgi.org. I think that's it. Yeah, info@cgi.org. And we'll try to get that out to you. The Church That Jesus Built. My friends, this is Bill Watson, hoping to see you here again on YouTube.